Please come.
Thank you.
Vanakkam.
Thank you.
Please sit down. Have you ever lived in Delhi?
Very recently, just over the last year, sir.
Last year. So, Aparna, we find that you have got some prize or something in architecture.
Yes, sir.
And your interest in urban governance, water supply. So, could you explain a little?
Yes, sir.
What is it about?
I'm an architect and urban planner.
You are an architect.
Yes,
but- Okay.
Yes, sir. And so the architecture award was during my undergraduate studies, and the urban governance project was my postgraduate dissertation. So it was in the year 2019 when I completed my master's degree.
And this Berkeley undergrad prize, what was this for?
So it's an international competition for undergraduate architecture students, and they basically challenge you to develop architecture solutions for social issues. And the year that I was participating in, it was about child-friendly learning environments.
Yeah.
And so I studied government schools in Nagpur, where I was studying, and compared it to architecture designs in other cities where children have better learning environments. And I tried to understand what were the differences and what were the things lacking in government schools. And so this.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, child-friendly schools. So what are child-friendly schools? How do you make them child-friendly?
So this is quite a vast topic, sir. But what we need to understand as architects and even as human beings is that children see the world from a very different perspective than our own. And right from like they're much shorter than us. So what they see and what they experience is very different. And so an environment where children can thrive, children can enjoy and experience and learn is something that is child-friendly. Yes.
So have you come across any good models of child-friendly schools in the country?
Yes, sir. There are several actually. The one that I studied in particular is in Goa by an architect named Gerard de Kanha, and it's called Nisha's Play School. And it's a beautiful brick structure with a lot of play of light and shadow. And in fact, they had chalkboards at lower heights, wash basins, things like that. Yes.
Good. Thank you.
If I were to ask you, who's your favorite Indian architect? Without going into history, don't tell me Vidyadhar who planned Jaipur. Post-independence India, who have left their signatures on major buildings in India, and I'm not talking of Le Corbusier, what would be the Indian architects you would name?
Okay. I think I have two favorite, but I think I'll pick one for now.
No, you can give me both. I have two favorites also. Let's see if we coincide.
The first one is Professor Balakrishna Doshi, who is the founder
Yes.
of my alma mater.
Did you go to the CPET? No.
Yes.
You went to CPET?
Yeah, my master's program was from CEPT University.
Before we proceed to the second one, what is Doshi's signature building in Ahmedabad?
In Ahmedabad, I guess the CEPT University campus itself.
CEPT University campus is one, but have you heard of Doshi's Gufa?
Yes, it's within the campus itself.
Yes, I know. But that one brings out the brutalism and the primeval force which goes back to his having worked with Le Corbusier and Kaplan. So that's one. Who's the second architect?
The second one is Professor Charles Correa.
Excellent.
Yes.
Name three buildings by Charles Correa which are remarkable for you in different parts of the country.
The first one is in Ahmedabad, the Gandhi Ashram, which he has designed. The second one is actually a skyscraper, a very tall tower in Bangalore, Sir M. Visvesvaraya Towers, and it has actually a very deep connect with the urban realm. And the third one, I think, would be the Charles Correa Foundation building and the Jawahar Kala Kendra.
You would not go to Bharat Kala Kendra and the assembly building in Bhopal?
No, sir, I have not been there.
You have not been there. So what you have not seen doesn't exist. So let's get back to Nagpur, where you have spent some of your time. What would be a major modern building which harks back to India's architectural history built recently in Nagpur? Nagpur is a city of many fames, including the headquarters of RSS2.
Yes.
But I will not give you the second clue, because the second clue will give away the building.
Okay. Recently,
Not recently. It would take. I mean, I'm taking you back about 4 decades, half a century back.
okay, I'm
Baba Sahib Ambedkar converted into
Yes.
Buddhism,
yes,
and then there is a stoop,
Yes.
which is a contemporary stoop built on a hill in Nagpur.
yes, sir.
That's fair enough. One more question before I'm through with you, because
Yes.
architecture happens to be a passion with me. There is a non-Indian architect who made India his home, and construct. He was advised by Gandhi to go to northernmost extremity of the borderland with Nepal and Tibet, and went back to Kerala. And he has a kind of architecture. Gautam Bhatia has written a book on his work. Can you name the person and tell
I
me?
think you're referring to Laurie Baker.
I am.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. No. The one, my other favorite architect you forgot, I mean, not forgot, you probably is not your favorite, Hasmukh Bhai in Gujarat,
Yes.
who again I know is no more. Doshi ji is still around in 93, but all yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Aparna Ramesh, the one thing that I noticed that your so much interest that the trying to improve and thinking about it and the philosophical aspect of the urban atmosphere in our country. I'm coming straight to the point. Out of 30 most polluted cities in the world, we have got 22 in our country. And the most of our urban centers are kind of the living nightmare. I'm sorry that I'm using a bit very strong words about that. Why do you think that at one place we always think that the urban development is one of the biggest important engine in the economic development as well, but at the same time our urban centers are almost collapsing under some kind of the groaning under a lot of pressure. So what is going wrong? Because we cannot simply do away with the development of the urban cities because they are the growth engines the way it is understood.
Yes, sir. So you're absolutely right.
So what is going terribly wrong? Why we have got the 22 of the 30 most polluted cities in the world?
So from my own research, I found that urban governance is something that is quite a challenge in India, especially at the third level of government. The democratic decentralization has not occurred.
So urban governance that you were talking about, it's after all, it's also a representative governance. The first thing. Second thing is that your representative democratic culture reflects in the urban governance as well. So what is so specifically wrong in urban governance?
Okay. There are quite a few issues I think I would like to highlight. The first one is, of course, the poor financial resources available with the local governments.
Okay.
They are often challenged because they don't collect enough taxes, and more often than not, they are dependent on.
Good point. What is next?
The second one is, I would say, poor capacities in terms of human resources, skilled human resources in particular. And the third one I would say is that the elected government is often not considered as important as the executive arm of the government at the lowest level. So I think that is something that is quite a bit of a challenge.
All over the world, the federal governments are very possessive about the capital cities. I'm talking about Delhi, for example, 239 capital AA. And recently that, as you know, that we have a so-called elected, although you know that after the new Amendment Act, Delhi, the National Capital Territory of Delhi is basically the lieutenant governor. But why do you think that the Delhi cannot be given the kind of autonomy that such a size and the population where it could decide issues that relates to law and order and the policing and land?
Sir, I think here the important question is how do we strike a balance between the central government and the desires.
But why do we need to strike a balance? Why it cannot be a full state, for example? Do we have any examples from the other parts of the world where the federal control on the capital cities have been as pronounced as it is in Delhi?
So I'm not very sure about other cities across the world. No, sorry.
Okay, the one last question. You are a student of the anthropology. And anthropology, as you know, that it certainly adds a certain dimension to your personality. Your entire worldview changes the way you understand race, ethnicity, caste, and human relations. You might have read about the issues of the Rasmi Samant in the Oxford University student union, the case, and it has stirred the conscience of the entire nation in our country. I was trying to access some of her so-called the tweets, and I noticed that the people have written much worse things in the leading universities in the world, including Harvard and Oxford, and still they have gone scot-free. So do you think that due to her ethnicity, the entire the university, the environment was very harsh towards her?
So I think race and racism in particular is a very important issue in today's times, and it has been so ever since the 1960s. So there's no excuse for making racist comments, whoever it is, whichever ethnicity you belong to.
You are presupposing that she made very harsh racist comments. Have you read the specific those tweets which have been referred by some people?
No, sir. But in case she has, I think then it is justified. But if she's not, then the university must take an must take it under investigation and then decide.
Melvin H. Marx, the famous anthropologist, his books start with the opening line, "Aliens are funny." What does it mean?
I've not read the book, sir, but I can make
Just
a guess.
think about it, that why anthropologists would start with this line. The first page reads only one line, "Aliens are funny."
Perhaps it's a way of saying that people who belong to a different culture or a different community often seem very odd to us.
Could possibly the reason for a lot of the harsh, the environment that Rasmi Sawant faced. Although I don't want to bring in exact many of her tweets, which I don't think that in comparison to what other people have done in the recent past was any worse. But anyway, do you think that her ethnicity had to do any role it played in the kind of the treatment she received?
I don't think I can make a judgment on that, sir, because I'm not aware of the full facts of the case.
One last question very quickly. What is the difference between race and ethnicity?
So race and ethnicity are terms which are used interchangeably, but they have very different meanings. Race is more of a biological term, whereas ethnicity is a social construct. Essentially, it refers to people who share a common culture with you.
Are you sure?
This is the definition.
Or in
that
the
I
modern
remember, sir.
times, we have invariably started using ethnicity more in place of race itself, because there are no any pure races as such in the world.
Yes, sir. That is true. There has been an intermixing, and there are no longer pure
Thank you.
races.
You know, you come from a very wonderful background, and like Professor Pant, I also have an abiding interest in architecture. And the university I represent and I'm part of doesn't use the word architecture. They use the word built environment. And the role of environment becomes very critical in the area of architecture and building construction, road construction, etc., cities of the future. And given the recognition you've received for the kind of work that you've done, how will you use this if you were to join the IAS? Because I don't see a possibility of your using this enormous talent pool that is currently in your head, and which you've translated into different activities, which have received kudos from different people. So would you write off all those years of your life?
Sir, I think the very reason I applied for this exam is because I want to join the Indian Administrative Service to use the knowledge that I've gained over the last few years. Particularly during my postgraduate studies, I had the opportunity to meet several government officials who are working in the field of urban development, infrastructure development, and I've been able to support them through my research. And I've felt that once I'm on the other side of the table, when I'm with working with the government, perhaps as an administrative service officer, I'd be able to use my knowledge better.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can give you feedback right away. Aparna, you are a very good candidate. You're very pleasant, very charming, you're knowledgeable, and you answered most of the questions very well. But of course, my colleagues will tell you. The questions are mostly asked from what you have written here, you know. So read again and just try and anticipate what questions could be asked. If all of us asked you on architecture, now we haven't asked a question on smart cities, but that could be a good subject. And of course, the question like why has the project failed? Is it failing? Can it succeed? So some clarity will be expected. You have also mentioned somewhere about water. Now, water is one of the biggest unsolved problems of the country, but in fact growing. And you coming from Tamil Nadu and Karnataka issue, Kaveri and tribunal and others, these are things which keep on cropping up. So water crisis, what are the futuristic solutions? We'll have to, for instance, energy was a major issue, but after solar energy, you know, it has revolutionized. The 30 rupees a unit has come down to 3 rupees a unit and even less. Now, similarly, do you think we can expect a breakthrough in water side, like for instance, desalination? If it becomes cheap, There is no dearth of water because we have sea all around us. We just desalinate for cheap. Now, is some technological research going on? There is a center in Tamil Nadu on desalination research. So, whether these are the possible questions. And one thing which I have been telling everybody, when is your interview?
18th June.
18, oh, long time. You have all the time. So, start a diary from today. And what newspaper do you read?
The Hindu.
The Hindu. I like your confidence that that is the natural answer. Hindu is the best, and otherwise, well, a little bit of North India coverage. Indian Express. These are two good papers. Start a diary. From today, pick up 5 topics which from Hindu on anything, current affairs, socio-economic issues, or whatever, and 1 page on each. Whether it is a 1-line answer, 2-line, or 10-line answer, but dedicate 1 page to each topic. So by the time of your interview, you will have 200 pages of important current affairs issues, the latest and authentically written down. Of course, some of them will be updated as the news, because some items are in the news repeatedly. Keep updating, and that will be very, very helpful.
Yes.
And the day you go for the interview, do ensure that you get up early to read the newspaper.
Yes.
But 2 days before the interview, stop studying. Just enjoy, some serials, some comedy show here, there, just to relax your mind.
Yes. Thank you.
No, I think I was very happy with your answers, and you have done an intelligent thing. All your hobbies really grow out of the seeds of your architecture. So whether you talk of water management or smart cities, you basically can go back to your core strengths.
Yes,
But it may just happen that the interview does not follow the line of architecture and your hobbies and so on. So what the Honorable Chairperson has said is of crucial importance, that you know enough about domestic politics, enough about international relations, enough about society. It may have nothing to do with this. So here you are pretty solidly grounded, and your hobbies are not chaotically in dissonance with the rest. And you have interview in 18th June, so you can build an environment for your success. There's enough time. That's all.
Indeed, it's a very, very remarkable performance. Except for that, I noticed that lacking in the quality of an anthropologist would have. When I was talking about the question of Rasmi Samant, we are not privy to all the information. But while accusing her of what she might have done, you should have taken into consideration that what the Foreign Minister of India talked about in Rajya Sabha, how the India has raised this issue. Oxford University itself has promised to look into that, and how Rasmi Samant herself she has defended. She has actually explained that, and what actually she meant that anybody else in her place would have got the benefit of doubt, but she has been very, very harshly treated. Actually, I don't want to go any more details into that, but you should have been a little sympathetic and taken into account all these things, and then you should have said whatever you said about her. You are a student of anthropology, so perspectives change. Again, the same thing was happening. For her particular ethnicity, you yourself became very harsh towards her. And this happens with the people of the Indian origin. They also look a bit sympathetically towards the people of the Caucasoid origin, but at their own the ilk, they become again very harsh. Be very, very careful such things, because the board will be testing your cultural perspective and ethnocentrism, whether you display even the simplest trace of ethnocentrism in your own conversation or not.
Yes, sir.
Because a student of anthropology,
Yes, sir.
you were doing very well. Excellent candidate for the excellent result. I have got the great the hopes, but these are the things you will have to very, very careful. This ethnocentrism should not reflect in any of your answers.
Yes, sir.
Yourself being a student of anthropology. Urban centers that you talked about, that was an excellent answer. Overall, very good performance.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to say that you're very articulate, and I like your style, which is that you speak with composure. You're not aggressive in the way that you speak. You're soft-spoken, you have clarity, you have brevity, and these are all very strong plus points. But as the Honorable Chairman said, that, when you identify certain areas in the pieces of paper that actually pertain to you and which you've put together, if you say water, for example, and you're from Tamil Nadu, people will ask, why is it that Chennai keeps having a water problem year in and year out? Now, if the answer was very simple, someone else would have discovered it. So it's good to think about, your immediate biography, your everyday surroundings, and think about the kind of response you would give. I also believe that, a question on the pandemic can come up. Now, if you're an architecture student, I mean, I know that at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, one of the questions that everyone is talking about is, what would the workplace of the future look like? What would a school look like? What will a hospital look like? How do you redesign all of this? Because post-pandemic, there'll be significant changes, right? So think a little bit in the future, because you have incredible talents which are already there. See what you can harness, what new questions can come up and be thrown at you, and then handle it from there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question which may come for you will be child-friendly schools, because you mentioned this is something interesting. For instance, what are the 3 things you recommend for child-friendly, and not just architecturally? There can be architectural dimension, the other could be teaching style and course material. So to work on that. It's a very interesting subject.
Yes.
Thank you very
Thank you so much.
What is the area of consultancy of your father?
So he's a tax consultant, indirect taxes.
Okay, so there could be questions
Okay.
the
Yes.
board could ask.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you.